I was going to make myself a gin and tonic to drink while doing this tag because it's the under the influence tag. But then someone, probably me, drank the last tonic water and didn't put any more in the fridge, so I've got some soda water instead. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. I really don't know what to say other than the fact that I am so excited to be doing this tag. This is the Under the Influence tag. I hadn't thought about how much I like these questions until I saw a couple's video. Thank you to a couple of a couple books who tagged me, and in case you're curious, the original is by A Book Olive. But they're just really interesting questions, and I think I might have some fun things to say, so I guess, as I say in every video, let's dive on in. Also, I'm starting to think I should have some sort of penalty I have to do when I say, like, let's dive on in, because it's repetitive, it's too much. What do I say instead? Give me suggestions down below. Question 1. What's a fantastic book you read off the recommendation of another booktuber? And oppositely, what's a book that you were talked out of reading because of a booktuber's review? I've read a lot of books that were fantastic on the recommendations of other booktubers. Seriously guys, you guys recommend some amazing books. But the one I'm gonna mention here is one that I never would have read except for the recommendation I got, and that is The Clicking of Cuthbert by P.G. Wodehouse. This was recommended to me by Emrita of Emrita by the Book, and if a lesser booktuber had recommended it to me, I might not have read it, but I know that Emrita's recommendations are gold, so I said, even if this is a short story collection about golf, I'll give it a try. And lo and behold, it was amazing! This is such a humorous and interesting short story collection, and I say that as someone who hates golf. I have never played, I hate watching it, absolutely no interest in golf, but the things that Wodehouse does with characters and the like caricatures of characters that he constructs and the way he has them interact and the way he tells stories is fantastic. So thank you Emrita for that recommendation. As for a book that I've avoided or decided not to read because of a review, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I saw Brittany of Literarily Smitten review this book, I want to say earlier this year, late last year, I don't know when it was, and her review and the things that she didn't like about it made me so positive that I wasn't gonna like this book either that I decided to just not bother reading it. I've been sort of thinking about it, I haven't read any V.E. Schwab, the premise sounds cool, everyone says it's so good, but I was also like, but what if I read it and I hate it? And I saw her review and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna like this book. Question 2. Has Booktube opened your mind to or changed your mind about any genres? I don't think it's really opened my mind or changed my mind too much about any genres. The closest I can think of is classics. I really didn't read many, if any, classics prior to Booktube, and then seeing other booktubers talk about them had me start thinking about like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Maybe I would like to read that. And now that I'm reading a few, I'm actually really liking them. But for the most part, I think Booktube has more had the effect of making me more likely to pick up books from genres that I read some but not a lot from. I can't think of any specifics right now, but I'm sure there are things where it's like I maybe read 1 or 2 books a year before from this genre, and now I'm seeing like many books that I want to read. So it hasn't changed my mind, it's just exposed me to more possible books. Question 3. How much time did you spend on YouTube before Booktube, and how much time do you spend on it now? Before Booktube, my time on YouTube really varied. I mean, I don't want to get into numbers, I don't want to think about that. I spent a fair bit of time on YouTube, but it was sort of varied, and I didn't watch Booktube specifically consistently before I started my channel. So I've been following booktubers for, gosh, probably like close to 10 years now, but I didn't tend to sort of like, ooh, new video's out, I'm gonna watch it. I'd sort of go, oh, I wonder what, Jean's Bookish Thoughts has posted lately, and I'd go through and spend like a week watching everything she'd posted in the last 6 months, and then I'd get kind of bored, and I'd be like, oh, maybe 2 weeks later I'd watch someone else. So it was much more like binge watching certain people, whereas now I actively like watch a lot of Booktube videos every day. I watch a lot of YouTube now. It's not great, but let's not talk about it. Don't make me go there. Question 4. How many books did you read per month, per year before Booktube, and how many do you read now? So in 2019, which was my last full year where I did no Booktube, I read an average of 5 books a month. And I think that's pretty representative. By 2019, I was entirely done with school. I was like the first full year that I spent fully just as a working adult. I'm gonna kind of throw out 2020 because I started my channel halfway through the year, you know, pandemic, that affected my reading in the first half of the year. And I'm gonna go with what's my reading now. So we're gonna compare 2019 to 2021. And now I would say I read an average of probably 10 or 11 books per month. So it's a lot more. It's close to double. It is double. What I will say though is that my standard deviations are much smaller now. So in 2019, it was an average of 5 books a month, but I'm pretty sure I had some months where I read maybe 1 book, and then other months where I read 8. Whereas now, I rarely read below maybe 9 books a month, and I don't think I've ever read more than 14 books in a month. So it's a much smaller range that I'm reading in. Most months I'm between probably 10 and 12 books is pretty consistent. I don't have an endpoint to sharing these stats. I just like stats and want to share them. Question 5. Has Booktube affected your book buying habits? And if so, are you pleased or displeased by this? When I first started my channel, and I mean literally like the first month that I was posting videos, and when I was first starting to make videos, I went bit crazy with the book buying. I sort of started thinking like, oh, well, I'm a booktuber now. It's okay, I'm buying books for my Booktube channel. Which, like, it's true, it was, and it was exciting and it was fun. And then I sort of sat down and went, I've bought 30 books this month and I've read 10. This is not going to end well. I can't bring in 3 times as many books as I read in a month every single month, either economically or just like stress-wise from the weight, the mental weight of that digital TBR was gonna get out of control. So after that, I think it's actually been really beneficial. I sort of went on mostly a book buying ban for the rest of 2020. Then in 2021, one of my goals is to buy 1 book per 2 books read so that, you know, I'm getting some books moved through. I'm slowly working down that TBR a little bit. And I think that works really well. I think more about the books that I buy. I'm more likely to buy books based on a recommendation from one of you guys than just because I see it randomly, so I think I'm happier with the books that I am buying. Once I sort of got over the initial rush, been really good, and it's been pretty positive. I certainly wasn't keeping track of all the books I was buying before, which meant I was far more likely to go out of control, and because I now, every time I buy a book, write it down to mention in my next book haul, I'm much more conscious of these things. Question 6. Has a review by a booktuber ever retroactively made you reconsider your stance on a book? This isn't like a review I saw on someone's channel, but yes, absolutely. In October, I did my first ever buddy read with Lana and Crystal, and we read, I think it was called A Rogue of One's Own by Evie Dunmore. I can't remember. You know the one. It's like suffragettes and there's it's a romance novel. I'd never read a romance novel before. I read that. Didn't really think about it that much, honestly. I was like, yeah, it wasn't amazing. It was a solid 4-star read. It was fun enough and like wasn't looking into it at all. And then we had our buddy read discussion and talking about it with them and seeing all of the issues that they had and things that they had been like, whoa, I noticed this. I was like, oh yeah, that's an issue. Oh yeah, I do not like that. So that completely changed my view of that book. Question 7. Are there any videos you've been inspired to make after seeing another booktuber's video/videos? Have you ever felt inspired by another booktuber's style? Their video style, their book organization style, their personal style, anything? I don't think I've made any specific videos that were inspired by someone else's. I mean, I probably have and I'm just blanking on it and not giving credit. I think I'm pretty good at giving credit in videos if I take an idea from someone though. So I can't think of any one that jumps out. And as for overall style, I think yes, but in a more general way. I don't think I usually see a booktuber do something a certain way in their video or wear a certain kind of clothing or wear a certain hairstyle or something and then think I'm gonna try and do that. I think it's more like the general absorbing things through osmosis and exposure type situation where maybe if I see something enough times, eventually my brain starts being like, hey, maybe you should try that out. I guess the closest I've come to directly being inspired is back in January, I was getting really sick of my thumbnails and I was just finding like that they weren't looking how I wanted them to look and I wasn't feeling like I was doing a good job with them. So I watched Books and Lala's video where she spent a whole year experimenting with different thumbnail styles, and every month of the year she tried a different booktuber style or like a different style of thumbnails and sort of reflected on what worked and what didn't for her. So I watched that video. It was like an hour long. I'm gonna link it down below because seriously, it was life-changing. It was incredible. And after watching that, I sort of played around a bit and said, well, okay, well, what elements can I take from like all of these different people and incorporate them into what I want my thumbnails to look? And I'm so happy with them now. I mean, sometimes I do still feel a bit like, okay, this is just an okay thumbnail, but I feel like my okay thumbnails now are so much better than my okay thumbnails before. Maybe this is all in my head. Maybe you guys don't notice or care, but I like them a lot more, so it makes me a lot happier to post my videos and to like look at my channel. Question 8. What are some pressures you feel on your reading life because of your channel? I do feel a bit of a pressure to read, I guess. And that's both a positive and a negative thing. Because, you know, pressure's not inherently negative. On one hand, before I started my channel, I never would have questioned if I took 2 weeks where I barely read anything. I mean, I always read before bed, but sometimes I would read literally 2 pages before bed every night for a week, and that's it. And before my channel, I never would have thought about that. It's just like, okay, I'm just doing other stuff. I'm interested in other things. This is why I only read 5 books a month before my channel. Whereas now, I definitely feel a bit more pressure to make content and to have books to talk about, so I feel a bit more pressure to be reading books and like, ooh, I should be working on that, I should read more, which can be a bit hard when you're in a slump or you're just really busy and you're feeling like, oh man, I have to read. Like, I've got a bit of that right now. Things are a bit busy and I have this feeling of like, okay, I've got to read a chapter of that book tonight and I need to read a chapter of this one and I need to get, because I've got things I want to do with them. But that's also not entirely negative. On the whole, I'm a lot happier with my reading now, and I read a lot more, and that makes me happy. Whereas before, I might have just put on Netflix and not even like really been enjoying what I was watching and just half watched Netflix and scrolled through Facebook for the evening. I'm way more likely now to spend an hour or 2 in the evening reading a book, and that makes me a lot happier. I get a lot more enjoyment out of reading than I do scrolling through Facebook. So, like I said, the pressure is both good and bad. It's definitely present, but it's not a universal good or ill. Question 9. In what way, if any, do you feel the social element of the community has influenced your reading? Do you think about books differently since joining? I think talking about books, whether it's doing a buddy read or a group read, or just talking about books to you guys, whether I'm doing a book review or talking about them in my wrap-up, that discussion element has been such an improvement to my reading. I might mention books before to my partner, but it was mostly just something I read and then I sort of moved on. But now I take notes on what I'm reading. I think about it more while I'm reading. I think I notice things in the books more now because I think, oh, this is something I might want to mention. So I'm more engaged with what I'm reading. I talk to my partner more about books. I just think about the books that I'm reading so much more. And that has been so awesome. And I feel like I'm getting so much more out of my reading now, which is just really fantastic. And I don't think I would have necessarily got to that level without starting my channel. That being said, I think I might also be more critical now, and I think I might also, because I'm paying more attention, be more aware of things where before I just like would have ignored or not even noticed, and now I read them and I'm like, oh, I don't like that. That's not super well done. Oh, that could have been done better. Whereas before I just would have been like, oh, fun. Question 10. What impact do you hope your own channel will have on the booktube community and or aspiring booktubers? I mean, there's the obvious stuff that I think we probably all feel of, I want to make this seem accessible, I want to make this seem welcoming, I want to be a channel that puts forward the message that everyone is welcome on Booktube, that if you would like to start a channel, just do it, we want to see what you have to say, the more the merrier. Like, yes, I want obviously all of that stuff, but I also sort of want to be, I guess, an example of you don't have to read either the specific popular books or in a specific genre to be a booktuber. I think one of the things that I was really worried about when I started my channel was I was going, I don't feel like I read the popular books. I don't read Sarah J. Maas. I don't read V.E. Schwab. I don't read, I can't think of any of the others right now, but like, I didn't read a lot of the books that I saw people talking about on Booktube. I also didn't read super literary stuff, which was sort of the other side that I saw. A lot of the more adult booktubers I followed beforehand read a lot of like literary fiction, which I read some, but I don't read a lot. And I was sort of feeling like, where am I gonna fit in? I don't know what my niche is. I read a lot of weird stuff. I don't just read fantasy or just read romance. Like, I'm a bit all over the place. Is this gonna work? Are people gonna wanna follow my channel? And yes, they will. You can read whatever you want, and there will be people who want to hear you talk about it and who are excited about what you're reading. And I think that's a really important thing to put forth into the community. Obviously, I'm not saying that if you have a genre channel that that's wrong. You do you. You read what you read and talk about what you read. But I guess don't feel like you have to change who you are or what you like to read in order to be a booktuber. That's what I want to put forth into the booktube community. Those were all the questions, and it's time to tag some people. First, I'm going to tag the wonderful Amy of Potato Brarian, who, I don't know if I'm just imagining this or if she often does have a glass of wine in her videos, but I feel like I associate that with her in my head because she's very good at the having a drink and chatting about books type videos, so I would love to see her answers to this tag. I'm also going to tag Carrie, a very literary Carrie. She's someone who I feel like reads both an interesting mix of books and also some kind of niche books, so I would love to see what she has to say about some of these questions and how maybe that's changed or not since she started her booktube channel. Then I'm going to tag Brittany from Literarily Smitten because she is such a big influence on me in my reading. She's one of those channels where I watch any of her videos and every single book she mentions I want to then immediately go out and buy and read because they all sound so good and so interesting. So since she influences me a lot, I'd love to see her answers. And finally, I'd love to tag Margaret Pinard, who's another channel who I feel like reads some interesting and different stuff and reads a lot of books that I don't necessarily see a lot of other people on Booktube talking about. Maybe that's because of the channels I watch, but what's that been like? Has that affected your choices, Margaret? I would love to know. As always, no pressure if you don't want to do this tag. I never want to, cause anyone stress. And if you would like to do this tag, but I haven't tagged you, please consider yourself tagged. I would love to see your answers. You guys know the drill. Leave them in a comment. Let me know if you make a video. I just really like seeing this tag. It's a really interesting one and people have some really cool answers to it. So I want more people to do it so I can more videos. Whether you are a Booktube viewer only or if you make content, let me know down below. Do you think Booktube influences your reading? Has it been positive or negative? I mean, I hope it's been positive. I don't want this to be a negative space, but anyway, whatever the case is, please let me know down below. And as always, if you like this video, please hit the like button down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.